All right, guys. So this is for the station teaching model. So if you're going to station teach, it's going to require a little bit of chatting with your co-teacher before. You need to make sure that both teachers know which material they're responsible for. And with station teaching, each teacher is going to be going over a different set of material. So for this particular lesson that we did station teaching, Miss Wilson was going to go over station 1. I was going to go over station 2, and our final station was independent. Now, with station teaching, it doesn't always have to be equal time frames for each station. For our particular lesson, we needed more time to cover this content. So what we opted to do was have 2 stations, and then the final station, we would just take them through in the actual room we were in, and I'll explain that when we get to it. Now, before you actually hold your class that day, you have to set it up. It's pretty easy. So what you'll do, let's make our co-teacher or presenter. You will then go over here, click this to manage your breakout rooms because you need some breakout rooms. For this particular lesson, we did 2 breakout rooms for this particular station teaching activity, but you can have 3 if you have equal time frames for your different stations. So you would have maybe Miss Wilson. In that case, Miss Wilson would take station 1, I would take station 2, and in station 3, I would have them doing some sort of activity, maybe a quizzes review, or they could work independently in Canvas. That's fine. But that's when I would use the 3 breakout rooms. But for this lesson, we needed 2. So I would name the breakout room. I like changing it to station so that when I create it, it's just the station 1 and station 2. I like that a little bit better than doing it the other way. Now that you have your stations created with Jigsaw, the PowerPoints are automatically uploaded into the station. So you'll need to go into the station so you can just drag yourself and make sure the correct presentation's on. You go to the presentation that's currently up, and Miss Wilson in station 1, she's actually starting out with ancient Egypt. So I would just go ahead and have that prepared for where she needs to start. And if I was taking station 2, I would be starting at a different point. So I need to make sure I have the correct presentation pulled up for them. And then what you would do is go to the point in the PowerPoint where you are going to start in this room. So I taught ancient India this day, or the Indus River Valley, sorry. So that's what I taught on this day. And I'm going to hide that again. So I wanted to go ahead and make sure that whenever my kids came to station 2, it was at the starting point I wanted them to be at. All right, so now you've got your rooms created. They're good to go. And if you had a third room, you would do the same thing. But in our case, our last 10-minute station, we just actually kept them in the room that they were in for their last station. And so the last slide that they would have seen in this room would be, get to it. It would have been this final station, and it's just for 10 minutes. And we'd give them some work time for their final station. But just for the sake of this, let me go back to the top. All right, so now my stations are created for when my kiddos come to the room. Now, my advice to you, whenever you decide to use station teaching, I would allot for about 5 minutes at the beginning of class to go over what you're doing and maybe some things that are coming up in your class, just because you want to make sure you get a large number of your kiddos joining the class before you put them into breakout rooms. You want to make sure that you've got a good group so that you're not moving quite as many individually into stations. So what you would do at that point, once you have a good number of kids, you would go back over to manage your breakout rooms once the kids show up for class. And if you click this button right here, you can auto assign free attendees, and it will auto distribute them to the stations you've created. Now, for the first couple times you do station teaching, I personally would use this. You can just make homogeneous groups this way. It will, take the stress off of adding another to-do on your list before you use this model. So just create your homogeneous groups for the first couple times. Try using it this way. Just create them using this auto assign tool, and it will help you use this as easily as possible the first couple times you use it. Now, once you have auto-assigned your kids, if kids show up late to class, you might just want to keep scrolling up to the top occasionally. And if you see someone has shown up in the main room, you can just drag and drop them into a station, and they can start wherever they are. Now, one tip for you that I think is really helpful is rather than moving all of the kids to a different station, move the teacher. So in this case, after we taught for our time frame, Miss Wilson would come to station 2 and I would move to station 1. And I would just move this slideshow or this presentation to the part of the lesson that I was supposed to teach. Pretty easy, just move to where you need to go and you can start with the material that you need to teach. That's the easiest way, in my opinion, to do it. Rather than moving a large group of kids, I think it's easier just to move a teacher or two. Makes it a little less work for you. Also, just make sure that you've got it ready to go. And make sure, I would double check it before you come to class to make sure it's all there. And for gen ed teachers, this really isn't a lot of extra work on you. I have 2 classes that are co-taught and 2 that are gen ed. So for my gen ed kids, I just skipped this right here. Just skip that. Just don't go through this slide that says station 1, station 2, final station. Delete that slide and just teach it. Just teach it as if you're not using stations at all. So it really isn't a lot of extra work on the gen ed teacher, which makes this a really, really good option to use if you're able to do so. So hopefully this was helpful in showing you how you can use station teaching in your classes.